Bonjour and welcome back to Seaside Garage and the CX. 3 weeks ago I got this car through the MOT, and even though a Citroen like this is known to be extremely comfortable, the revival road that I have been on with this car so far has been quite bumpy, to be honest. I'd say from those 3 weeks that I have been driving this, I haven't been driving it for 3 weeks. I have been driving it for a total of 4 days, I would say. And all of those days has had their issues. That is not uncommon, not at all, when you revive a car and do it like I do it and take them from the barns and then just fix them up, make them safe to drive. Stuff will always break, especially in the first few weeks, because even though something might work to begin with, it might die when the first couple of heat cycles occurs, or when moisture on a normal driving condition is apparent. So that is not uncommon at all. Normally though, I'm a bit more lucky than I have been with this one so far, but the good thing is that I'm slowly ticking off a lot of stuff on this car, and hopefully in the end I will get a reliable car. On day one, I got it through the MOT and drove it back home. It couldn't start after the MOT. It turned out to be a weak battery and the starter issue that I'm having. More on that later. But other than that, the first day was pretty okay. The second day, we took it on a longer trip. That was the day that it started to overheat and push out all the coolant. That turned out to be the head gasket, as you may know if you are following this video series. That took some weeks to get right because I ordered the wrong head gasket, then the right one came, and it just took some time to do. Now that is sorted, the engine is running way nicer than it did before, way nicer. I got around 30 psi more compression on each cylinder after that cylinder head job. One thing, it was leaking the head gasket. Another thing is the head is now skimmed. And the last thing was the valves was in really poor condition. Unfortunately, I realized that the air filter was, and I forgot to show you that. Here's a small clip of it. Yeah, the air filter is toast. It is rotten from the bottom end. It was full of acorns, leaves, and mouse crap. And I was asking this car to breathe through all of that. So that was pretty impressive that it was driving pretty nicely, to be honest. But nothing has happened. Right now it got a temporary. Fix. It actually got an aftermarket filter on it at the moment. It's not more noisy than the original, a little bit at full throttle, but I think it will be okay, and it's just a temporary fix. Therefore, I'm still looking for another airbox. I'm also actually tempted to just try to weld mine up, because it's just the bottom end of it that is rusted through. So I might just end up rebuilding it, to be honest, and then getting a filter and put that back in. But it's running now, and that's nice. So first driving day in the CX went nicely. That was cool. The second day ended up with a blown head gasket and a couple of weeks of waiting time and a lot of work. Then the third day of driving, it actually drove really nicely. I was a bit tense because it was the first day driving after the head gasket swap. My eyes was looking at the temperature gauge all the time, but the temperature was just fine. Everything worked fine. I did have a problem with a lot of mist in the car. I think because when the car overheated, I actually got a lot of coolant smoke into the cabin because of some missing rubber pieces to cover up the holes. I fixed that now. And coolant got some kind of grease in it that is really hard to get off. I'm still having a problem, even though I really degreased that window. I'm still having a problem demisting the window. It's not that bad until you meet oncoming traffic at night, because that light will be hard to see anything. I think the main problem is that weak output from the heater or blower machine, because it got a window demist function, but it's only able to demist the bottom end of it, so I have to look into that to fix it. So that was one problem on day 3. Then later that day I took a trip to the local grocery shop to do some shopping. That went fine. Then when I went back into the car, it just wouldn't crank over. It was just like, you know, the sound of a completely dead battery. This car is extremely cool, in my opinion. The design is extremely nice. It's so slick. I cannot really help not to put it in low suspension mode when I park it, because it looks extremely cool when it's just lying there on the tarmac. So I had done that, of course, in front of that grocery store. And it might just be me, but I had a feeling that everyone was looking at this car because it's really cool. And even though I'll make these videos, I'm actually not that comfortable with a lot of eyes on me, especially if I'm not sure that the stuff will work. And of course I went to the car and turned it over and it wouldn't start. So I just sat there, just pretending that I was hanging out for a bit, just looking out of the window, being a little bit cool French kind of type, and tried again. And took a break, made sure no one was looking, and then tried again. And it started to go a little bit faster, I took a long break in between not to drain the battery, because if I drained the battery, I would be in big trouble. In the end, it fired up, and I realized, I drove it back straight into the garage and realized that the missing heat shield that a lot of you guys also commented about, the missing heat shield in front of the starter, because the starter is pretty close to the exhaust manifold. That made the wires, for one thing, very hot. They actually started to melt the outside protection. So that was not good. The other thing was the starter was extremely hot, and it just didn't really work very, very well when it was hot. Therefore, I made my own heat shield and fitted that to the car. As I'm making a heat shield, it's just curing right now. Wrapped in aluminum foil on one side and then just a piece of metal on the other side. I'm gonna screw that in, and then hopefully that will be cured. I think I will need a new starter anyway, but it couldn't. It was over 100 degrees on the solenoid, so no, it wasn't weird. I don't know why I didn't realize before how important that is, but it is. And there we go. The wires is packed a little bit more careful in there, away from everything, and the do-it-yourself heat shield is in place, not touching him anywhere. Hopefully it won't rattle. So yeah, I think this will work. That has made the temperature around the starter way lower. I no longer have any melting issues with the wires, but the problem is still there, but it's not as bad. If I really drive this car hard and get it really hot, I then park it, the car will be even more hot because there's no longer any coolant circulation. And if I do that, the car won't start for at least 10 to 15 minutes. It just won't crank over. It's just, and nothing more than that. So the starter is ready to be retired, to be honest. So I hope to find another one. They are quite expensive from new, so I hope to find a used one. But I might end up buying a new one because I want this car to be reliable, or as reliable as possible. But that was day 3. No, it wasn't. Another thing happened, because after that I drove to the petrol station to get some petrol in the tank. It was almost completely empty. That went fine. I went into the car and just hoped that it would start, because but it wasn't that hot. I drove it really carefully, really slow, with the heater on max inside until I got to the petrol station. So the temperature was only 80 something degrees on the coolant, and I just hoped it would fire up. And it fired up straight away, no problem. Then I went to pull away and it felt a little bit sluggish. I had to rev it a little bit. And then I realized I only had 3rd gear and 4th gear. All the other gears was completely gone, just from parking the car and filling it up with petrol. Lucky for me, the 2.5 liter engine apparently got a lot of torque, and the car isn't that heavy. But it wasn't really a problem to drive it home only using 3rd and 4th gear. I was just making sure that I was not putting myself in any position where I needed to use the reverse, because it wasn't there. So yeah, it turned out to be a pretty simple thing, but it was late night. I couldn't see anything. But let me show you what caused it. It's going to be a little bit difficult to see because of the spare tire, but I'm not removing it right now because it's really heavy. But down there is 2 rods, 2 shifter rods. One of them apparently controls 3rd and 4th gear, and I guess the other one controls all the rest. At least I couldn't get any other gears than third and fourth. This one pops off very easy because it's worn, I think. But all I had to do was to push it down onto that ball, and all the gears was back. I don't know how to tighten up that connection, to be honest, but maybe I can just squeeze it a little bit. I don't know. But as you can see, it pops off rather easily. I don't know why it came off though. When I packed up the car to fill the petrol, I, for fun, put the suspension in high mode because that made it a little bit more comfortable. Yeah, I know. But it's a party trick, the suspension thing. But it made it a bit more comfortable to stand and put in petrol. So I think for some reason, rising it up and maybe lowering it down again has made that pop off some way. I don't know, but that was what happened. I had all the gears when I pulled into the petrol station, and they were gone when I started it up again. So this is the 4th day of real driving the CX. So what do you think? Did it break down? Of course it did. I drove this car to my parents' place today, and I felt really majestic driving into their driveway, driving up in front of the house, lowering to the lowest settings just for cool looks, switching it off. Then a couple of hours later, I wanted to start it up and drive away. And it turned over pretty quickly, but it just wouldn't fire. It sort of fired up a couple of times at the beginning, then nothing. So I tried again, it spun over, still it wouldn't fire. So I thought, is it getting spark? Is it getting fuel? I noticed on the rev counter that the rev counter was moving, so I knew that the signal from the crankshaft sensor at least was getting to the ECU. By that, I just presume that the spark is also there. It should be. It would be weird otherwise. Of course, it could be a failure of the ignition coils, but there are 2 of them, so unlikely. So I was thinking fuel. And normally, and it's a bit annoying on the Citroen, but on fuel injection cars, when you put the ignition on, you will hear the fuel pump prime somewhere in the car. It's not the case on these Citroens and not the case on BX and Visa GTIs and so on. On those, the fuel pump will run when the engine is turning. So you will have to crank it to make that run. That means you cannot really hear it. It's very difficult to hear. So I couldn't hear it. I just didn't know. What I did was to find the fuel pump relay. It's a fuel pump relay and injection and ignition. I think at least ignition and fuel pump. It hides down in this area. It's a very big blue one. I took this off. With a jumper wire I can connect what is called number 30 and number 87B. Those 2, or is it these 2? One of these 2, I can't remember exactly right now, should fire up the fuel pump when the car is in ignition. So I did that, and all I heard was a click. It was just from the fuel pump area. And I know from this car running that the fuel pump is quite noisy. It's a bit whiny. Not that much, but it's a bit whiny, which could be because it was on its way out. But it was audible at least, but nothing. I couldn't hear anything. But what I did underneath the car was I climbed in there. With an axle stand, of course. Then I took off the wires on the fuel pump. This is the fuel pump. And fitted these wires, because with these I can take a battery, in this case a scale battery on, it's 20 volts I think. There's a lot of power on these. They are really, really nice batteries. I took them and fitted that to the positive terminal. This is a trick I use on old cars when I have to fire them up after standing still for a lot of years, because normally they see around 12 volts from the car battery. But by using this, I can kickstart it because it's more power than it normally sees. So if it's seized up a little bit, sometime this will help. As you can maybe hear, I don't think you can hear it, but the fuel pump is dum, dum. I can feel it also. It's not spinning. To be honest, it feels like something is jammed in there. I don't know, but all I can say is that it's not working. This is very normal in my experience. Actually, I changed the fuel pump on the Saab 900 Turbo when I got that. That was not working. I swapped that with a used one. That is already dead once again. I wanted to move it here a couple of weeks back and it's dead again, so I need to change that. I changed the fuel pump on the Rover Metro GTI I got to get it to fire. I changed it on the BX 4x4. I changed it on the Citroen Visa. Can't remember if I changed it on the XM. But it's a very common thing to fail when it's old, especially on Citroens, I think. So I was actually quite impressed that this one was working just fine. It wasn't a problem. This car was running when I got it. But apparently it wasn't really up for daily driving at least. But luckily I could get it locally. Tonight I fitted it in front of my parents' house. It was a bit of a deja vu feeling from back when I didn't have this garage, of lying in driveways with jacks and axle stands and tool that disappears in the ground and all that. It was a bit of a nice reminder of how it once was. I got the fuel pump changed and it fired right up. That was the breakdown of day 4. Who knows what will be the next one. But to celebrate 4 days with more than 4 breakdowns, let's try to fix something. Because, as mentioned, it's a really big problem with the lack of actual airflow in the cabin when I use the heater. Not so much because it's cold, that's one thing, I can live with that. It takes a long time to heat up the cabin, that's what I mean. But the front windscreen fogs up so quickly because I think it's a bit moist in there still. I'm airing out a lot when I drive it, heating it up and letting the air out of the windows, that will help. But the lack of airflow means that when I use the demist function on the front windscreen, it will demist like this much, which means that I would have to drive like this, which is unpleasant and also dangerous. So what I want to do is just to check the basics, because the fan motor is audible. It sounds to be actually pretty decent. Let me try to demonstrate. You can hear it now, I think. This is the maximum speed I can get out of it. And as you can hear, maybe you can hear it, but it is definitely doing something. And currently the demist function is on and I can barely feel it. But let's take the demister function off. Now the air should come out of here, full power. So yeah, you can see that something is happening, but it's definitely not a lot on max. So let's try to do something about that. I think when listening to it that it feels strained. There is a lot of gaskets and stuff in the system that could be perished and then let air out different places, but this feels or sounds almost muffled, especially out here. It sounds like a lot of suction is actually being made, but it's just forced through not a lot of space. So I hope to maybe find something in there that can explain that. Hopefully nothing living or has been living. This is where the air comes in through that hole in the bonnet. No, it's not for a turbo or something like that. Go through there, into this, and then into the cabin. There is a filter in here, as you can see. So I don't think mice has gotten in there, or maybe they made a hole somewhere else, but that at least I don't think is a problem. Hopefully. It could be really nasty to find out that I'm breathing a mouse nest in there. But quite possible. What the heck? Take a look at what I found. There's a plastic bag down there. And it's definitely not sucked in there by mistake. Someone put a plastic bag in there. And to be honest, that could make sense because, yeah, maybe not, but because this is there. Maybe there is an entrance in other places, I don't know, but I think someone put a plastic bag in here to prevent mice from getting into the cabin. Wow, it's a big bag. Because mice has been in the cabin, so maybe someone who cared about the car noticed that and tried to plug up the holes. I'm not sure if this will help anything though, because I don't think they can get in there. Oh, there's also a bag all the way down there. But this makes sense in my world because it feels like a lot of suction is being stopped or restricted by something. Is it possible to get my hand all the way down there? Oh, I might have to go get my child for this. Yeah, I got it. Another bag. Exciting. So let's go ahead and start that fan up once again, see if it makes any difference. So it sounds very different in here. It's still not a hurricane. It's feelable up to here, I think. So around here is the same as before. If I put it closer, it just won't light. I think this will be a massive difference on the demist function of this, because now I think we will actually get air higher than this point. Maybe even up to here. That would be nice. That would be really nice. So this was the story of the first 4 driving days in the CX with a lot of breakdowns, and now with something fixed also, which is really nice. I might have to use my inspection camera to make sure there's no more plastic bags down there, but I don't think so. Let's make a little contest just for the fun of it, because this car will break down again. I'm pretty sure of it. What do you guys think? Leave a comment down below what you think will be the next cause of breakdown, and if you get it right, I will send you some Seaside Garage stickers for free. Anyway, I'm gonna cross my fingers that day 5 will be less dramatic than the previous days. But we'll just have to see. All I know is, even though these breakdowns has been a bit massive, and I'm struggling a bit because I really don't have any reason to trust this car yet, and I need to trust my daily driver. That would be nice. But still, I'm really falling in love with this car. I think at the moment this is the coolest daily driver that I have ever owned. It's just so, there's so many nice and cool features about this car. And watching this car parked in a parking lot with the suspension on all low, I don't think I will ever be tired of that. And starting it up and letting the suspension rise, it's just, I really don't understand that Citroen went away from that concept. It's just, it's so different, it's so cool. Yeah, I really like this car. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.